โมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Something that has become increasingly central in our culture is the idea of time. We have calendars and dates and anniversaries and birthdays and appointments and meetings and all kinds of things. We have our work week, our school week, we have days of the week. We have the number of days we've been in lockdown, which I've forgotten, but it's hundreds. We're always measuring time, arranging our lives around time-based concepts. And of course we do that for convenience, and it helps the world go round. We live together, billions of people in the world, so using calendars and clocks and schedules, they can be very helpful. But like everything in life, if you look more deeply, often what happens is time becomes an attachment, becomes something we base our desires around, and it can generate a lot of delusion, and wherever there's delusion, there's suffering. And the obvious one, you go on a trip somewhere. If it's a long trip, a road trip or some flight or something, and it's many hours, then if you start looking at the clock, then the time seems to go slowly, doesn't it? You want to get there quickly, to get on and do other things. You don't enjoy the trip itself. Then you're like the proverbial kid in the back of the back car seat. When are we going to get there? Are we there yet? And much of life is like that, isn't it? When you're a kid, you're waiting to grow up. You say, when I'm old, when I'm older, when I'm big, then you can do all those things you start dreaming of when you're a kid. You see adults, and so you say, well, when I leave school, then I'm going to do what I want. I'm not going to have teachers or parents or people telling me what to do anymore. I'm going to be my own boss. Some people can't wait to leave home when they're in their late teens maybe, or go to college or uni or get a job so they can move out. Then when you get older, that becomes a turning point where you start looking back and you say, oh, I wish I was young again. When you're young, you look better, you feel better, you're more energetic. We're never happy, are we? And part of that is craving and attachment, the mind of wanting what it doesn't have, not wanting what it does have. So you're either too young or too old, and we can make a lot of problems in our life out of time. We never have enough time. We have time poverty, because we have so much we want to do. As long as you want to do things, then you have not enough time. So the idea of time starts off as a useful thing, but then it gets hijacked by our desires and our attachments. And then it can become a source of suffering. We say we can become a slave to time, clocking in, clocking out, trying to meet deadlines, targets, do many things in one period of time. And they say one who's seen the Dhamma loses that kind of suffering. One of the attributes of the Dhamma is it's timeless. Truth is timeless. So one who sees the truth, they brought their mind to realize truth, see the truth. There's no suffering over time anymore. So if you meet such a person, you meet a noble one, an arahant, they have this sense of timelessness around them. No worries, no concerns, because they've got nothing else to do. They don't have to feel stressed about missing an appointment because there's no more appointments anyway. There's no more work to be done, tasks to be completed, places to go, people to see. It's all gone from their mind because their mind is just seeing the Dhamma, seeing the truth all the time. We say Nibbana is the timeless, it's the unconditioned, the unborn, the uncreated. So the voice that says, "Are we there yet?" is gone. No more wanting, no more complaining, no more desiring. So that's why the arahant, the noble one, is free and happy. And they say the happiest person in the world. Because time doesn't matter anymore. No longer afraid of death. Because they've gone beyond birth and death. They no longer attach and cling or identify with the body as self. So if the body comes to the end of its life for one reason or another, it doesn't matter. And they're not clinging to feelings and memories and thoughts, the 5 khandhas. They don't cling to them anymore. They don't identify with them as self. So they're free of all pressure. Another thing time brings us, if we're not mindful, is pressure, isn't it? The pressure of time. That's all gone. So sometimes it's good to examine our relationship with time. Because you see, a lot of stress comes with the idea of time. It's time related. And our desires and our clinging makes much of the idea of time. Not enough time, or too long. Some things take too long. So people start the practice of meditation and they have the feeling, oh, this is going to take ages. It's going to be ages before I attain or get anything. I haven't got the time for it. I'm a busy person with many things to get on and achieve in this world. You know, the more ambitious you are, the more craving you have around getting results, getting on in life, doing things, being places, being somebody. Then you haven't got the time to invest in something like meditation. The Buddhist teaching on rebirth, it can go in 2 ways as well. Like people either think, this is good, I've got more time if I fail this life to become enlightened and improve things. Well, I've always got next life. But then other people think, this is going to take ages, not just one life, I'm going to have to be practicing for many lives before I reach Nibbana. So again, they kind of lose heart. It just seems too long, too far away. And whatever your view is, it's never quite right, is it? It's always going to undermine your efforts and maybe bring with it some disappointment. When I was a young monk, I went to see a senior monk in Bangkok to pay respects with a group of monks. We went, and this monk was a great scholar and knew a lot of the Buddhist texts. He could answer questions, explain things very well. He was a highly respected Buddhist teacher. But he actually said he didn't believe it's possible to attain Nibbana. Too difficult in this day and age. There's another idea of time, isn't it? This day and age, there was that previous time when the Buddha lived, some time in the past, when they could attain Nibbana, when people could meditate and attain jhana. But then in this day and age, it's not possible in the modern world, the real world. So he had the view that Nibbana not possible, jhana cannot be attained. You just kind of do your best to study and learn the Buddhist teachings, which of course is good, and do the best you can, make some good karma, and maybe some distant point in a future life you'll meet a Buddha and become enlightened then. Maybe the Maitreya Buddha. And that's a convenient way of looking at time, isn't it? This life is too difficult to practice, too many attachments, too many problems. So I'm going to just hang on until Maitreya Buddha comes. Hope for the best. If I see Maitreya Buddha coming by, I'll cling to his robe and he can drag me to Nibbana. It's a kind of Buddhist gambling, lottery. Will you be born in the time of Maitreya Buddha? Who can tell? Not much different from going to the casino and hoping for the best, that you'll strike lucky. Of course, some people do strike lucky, but probably statistically that's few. One time a lady came here and asked for some blessed string, so I gave her some blessed string. She said to her friend, I feel really lucky today, and they left the monastery and they went straight to the casino and won $18,000. But I've given away many blessed strings, and that was the only time I ever heard somebody won something. So statistically, the lottery, the gambling doesn't work very well. So our delusions, our attachments, our selfishness is always looking for excuses not to practice. Nibbana is too hard, jhana, meditation too hard, even 5 precepts too hard. Everything goes in the too hard basket. Do it next life or at some distant point. For now, I'll just carry on not practicing. And of course, what's the result? Oh, it's more suffering, more stress, more problems, because we're not putting much effort into looking after our mind or training ourselves. Which is a shame, because it's a missed opportunity. We have this human life, we have our human birth, we can practice, we can improve things. But we have to summon up that faith in the Buddha and his teachings, take refuge in the Buddha and his teachings, and then take refuge in the path, what we call magga. Dana, sila, samadhi, panya, all the things that we hear and learn about, we have to put our faith and take refuge in them as practices. They're not just things to be believed in, but things to practice every day. Keep coming back to the practice. And you see, anyone who's been successful on a worldly level, in business or science or sport or anything, one thing they learn is how to pick themselves up from loss, from failure, from things going wrong, and just start again and keep doing it. It's the same with the Buddhist path. Loss, failure, mistakes is part of the path. But the important thing is learning how to pick yourself up and carry on. Not give in to disappointment, depression, or stick with that sense of failure, not to identify with that, but to pick yourself up and move on. That's why the Buddha encouraged us to dwell in the present moment. We just chanted the Badeka Rata Sutta. The Buddha praises one who's living in the present moment, and they make the night where you're in the present moment a night of shining prosperity. One doesn't dwell in the past, and one doesn't get stuck on the thoughts and the plans and the hopes for the future that are still unrealized and totally uncertain. And the Buddha praised somebody who trains themselves to stay in the present moment, focus their mind there, anchor their mind there. And that doesn't mean to say, the practitioner denies the past, the good that was done, all the bad that was done, the mistakes that were made. We can be mindful of all that, but we also have to learn how to put it down, not carry it along and suffer with it. To learn and then to let go. And the future, to be clear that the future is still unrealized, so it's still not certain. Whatever way we picture it, think about it, describe it to ourselves, whatever hopes and plans we have, still not certain. Where we make our karma and where we can do things and the time that is important is right here, right now. So in answer to the question, are we there yet? Yeah, well, we are there yet, because we're here right now in the present moment. This is the important moment of your life, the most important moment. This moment has never been here before. There's never been a moment like this before. The conditions of this moment have never been here before. We have many causes and conditions leading up to this moment, but they've never been just the same in the past, and they'll never be the same again. We tend to measure life often in terms of highs and lows, don't we? Another way we sort of measure time. There was that time where I met with great success, everything went right, the business deal got done, I passed my exam, I met my partner, we won the game, all those sort of moments, the highs. We say, oh, that was the best moment of my life. And for sure, it was probably a good moment, but that's past now. We have to let that go. Actually, the best moment of your life is right now. I mean, that may even mean sometimes just mindfully reliving past events. There's nothing wrong with that if we're doing it with mindfulness in the present moment, with an attitude of learning. But to just cling on to the past, to the memory, unmindfully and with delusion, well, that's going to be a cause for suffering, because then it leads to the sense of being separated from the past event, the loss. It's no longer, why isn't it like it was before? It's never like it was before. It's never that good again. You start suffering when you just cling on with delusion. And the same with things that went wrong in the past, bringing them up over and over again in the mind, reliving them, rethinking them, and suffering with them over and over again. When you're really mindful in the present moment, you're dropping the past. It's not to deny the past or ignore it, it's just you're not clinging on to the memory with delusion. And this is perhaps the first and maybe the most important skill you learn in meditation, is how to maintain and bring your mind to the present moment using an object, so the breath or Buddho, and dropping the past and dropping the future. And you see, when we suffer, it's because we're not dropping the past, we're carrying it all along like a heavy weight, like a dead weight. And the more we do that, the more it tends to stimulate a lot of negative proliferation and suffering. And whether we're thinking about ourselves, our own life, what went wrong. We make ourselves miserable the longer we dwell in the past when we're doing that unmindfully. Or whether we're thinking of someone else and what they've done wrong and blaming them. We suffer when we're lost in the past, when we lose our mindfulness of the present moment and just get stuck in the past, memories, and all the negative thinking that they stimulate. When you bring your mind to the present moment and you mindfully acknowledge the past and let it go, then you're free of it. You're no longer a slave to those memories, those experiences. It may not be easy, but it's a goal that we can achieve, because we can achieve it periodically, can't we? When we meditate, you'll notice there are times when you drop everything. You're not caught up in a lot of planning and wanting for the future. And you're not too worried about the past, you've dropped it. And your mind settles in the present. It may not be for long, but we can do it with mindfulness, with effort. And that's teaching you what you can do. You're seeing the potential of your mind. You're seeing why the Buddha pointed to the present moment as the place of practice, because you see the value of it. It gives you the right skills and the right attitude and and the right qualities to deal with whatever is coming up in your life. So when all our energy becomes centered in the present moment, mindfulness is there, sila is there, samadhi is there, wisdom is there, insight is there. This is what we call magga, the path factors all coming together in the present moment. Then that's an energy, a good energy, that is conditioning the mind at that moment. So then we're in the right position, the best position to deal with whatever comes up next. And you don't know exactly what will come up yet next, because it's the future. Whether we're talking about a few minutes away or next day or next year. Nobody really knows for sure. But when you're in the present moment, you're always ready for the next moment. This is what we call true heedfulness, apamada, another quality the Buddha emphasized over and over again. When you're heedful, dwelling in the present moment, then when whatever life brings you next, you're ready for it. You're in the best position to receive whatever comes next. If it's good, fine, enjoy it, but don't get lost in it. If something bad comes up, well, that's sad, but you're ready to deal with it patiently, mindfully, and use your intelligence to solve whatever the problem is that comes up. And this is the benefit of the present moment. This is what it gives us. I remember once I was, when living with Ajahn Kalyano in Thailand, a businessman had bought some forest land on an island off the coast, not far from Ajahn Kalano's monastery. His monastery is on the coast. And the island, most of it was like tourist island, as most islands around Thailand become. But half the island was forest, mountains and forest, uninhabited. So it still had a lot of virgin forest, animals, peaceful. And this man had bought as an investment a part of the forest. And he offered it to Ajahn Kalano and said, "Oh, monks can come and live here. We can build a forest monastery." So off we went, a little group of us, with the man in a boat, and crossed the bay, maybe an hour's drive in the boat. So maybe, I can't remember how many kilometers from the coast you could see the island, so maybe 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers across the sea to it. I remember sitting in the boat, and the boat goes through the waves. It's a kind of not a speedboat, but it had an engine and it's going quite fast, and you go up and down with the waves. It wasn't such a big boat. And the sea was reasonably choppy. There's wind, so some of the waves are quite big, and the boat goes up and down. But because the engine's working well, and you're going, the captain of the boat knew what he was doing, so you're going in the right direction through the waves. So there's this sense, if your rudder is there, the engine works, you set your boat in the right direction, then even though the waves are choppy, some of them are big, and they push you around a bit, you still go through them. And Magga, or the path of practice, is like that. When you're training yourself in mindfulness to keep your mind in the present moment and bring up the skillful qualities, then even though you're coming across big and small waves and choppy seas, you can deal with it. And the path is like that boat. And the Buddha compared the practice, going across the ocean on a raft or a boat. And for sure, the ocean is never going to be 100% still and quiet. There's always going to be periods where there's storms and waves and wind. But if you just keep going and you master your boat well enough, then you just can go through it. And this is what Magga does. When you develop all these qualities of the Eightfold Noble Path, they're working together in the mind to get you through the ups and downs of life, whatever your karma brings you and whatever the world around you, the environment, the economy, society brings you. Then all the qualities are there in your mind to get through it. When we got near to the island, actually, there was at the last few hundred meters, the water became absolutely still. I'd never seen water quite so still before, and you could see everything underneath the surface of the water. When you're out in the deeper ocean, you don't see anything under the water. It reflects the sky and it's sort of murky. But when we got close to the island, the water was totally still, so you could see coral and fish and plants. It was very beautiful. It's a bit like when the factors of the path merge together after maybe many days, months, years of practice, who knows how long. You can throw out the clock. If you just keep practicing, eventually these factors merge together and you get that stillness of mind. And with stillness you get the clarity. It's not fuzzy, it's not doubting and lost and intoxicated with thoughts and feelings and desires. The mind becomes still when all the factors come together. It's like the water becomes still and you can see everything in it. And of course it's beautiful. Under the ocean, pretty much wherever you are in the world, if you can see under the ocean, there's a lot of beauty there. The rocks, the coral, the plant life, the fish life. So it was a very good reflection on the path. It's choppy for maybe a long time, but then you get to the stillness and you can see things and you understand things because you see clearly. In the end, all the monks stayed there, caught malaria. It was an uninhabitable place. There was nowhere to get food. The only way to get food was by boat, which wasn't very practical. And the forest, being very beautiful forest, but it was full of malarial mosquitoes. So I think 8 of us went. I was the only one who didn't get malaria for some reason. The mosquito still bit me, but I didn't catch it. Everyone else, including a little novice, is only 16 years old. Everyone caught malaria and decided, this is a difficult place to live, difficult to get food. And there was danger because the villagers, the hunters, like to set up traps for wild boar, which were like kind of primitive guns with a tripwire to catch the boar, and the boar would get shot, killed, they could go and sell them or eat them. And that was dangerous for the monks because you didn't know where the traps were. So the whole project was abandoned. But the trip was enlightening, reflecting on the Magga going across the choppy ocean to the stillness of the beautiful sea close to the coast. But practice is like that. We're aiming to bring the mind to the present moment all the time. It's what you're doing in meditation. You're learning to drop the past, drop the future, because you can. Human beings can do this. And we always think, if I drop my past, drop the future, then there's nothing left. How will I ever do anything if I don't plan and think about the future? So that's one way we trick ourselves, isn't it? As you start to meditate on the breath, you take a few breaths and you think about all the stuff you haven't done yet. Oh, I've got to do this, go here, do this, and it's all very important. But it's not. You have to teach yourself it's not important. When you're meditating, you can let it go. Teach yourself to be mindful. The past is the same. You start dragging up things that have happened, pleasant things you want to relive, people, experiences you want to go back to, enjoy, fantasize about, or the unpleasant that we keep hitting ourselves over the head by remembering it and going over it again and again. All of this we can drop, but we have to teach ourselves to drop it. And this is why the Buddha kept saying, come back to the present moment. Do the best you can in this moment. Make this day the best day. There's even one monk the Buddha praised because he says he makes every day like his only day. It's like just one day. He lives with one day, the Buddha said. He's not lost in the future, he's not lost in the past. He's just making the best of what he's got right here, right now, the present moment. That's a skill, and that's a skill you learn in meditation. People always say, well, then doesn't mean you can't plan anything, then you just kind of hope for the best as far as the future goes. Or they say, the world won't function if people stop planning the future, then nothing's going to happen, is it? The world will fall apart. Well, that's not what the Buddha was teaching. The Buddha was teaching you, first of all, to gain this skill of keeping your mind in the present moment. And then when you do think, plan about the future, you can do it with mindfulness and not get lost in those plans. And with mindfulness, then you've got space in the mind then to reflect on the truths, the simple truths, say, of the transient nature, the impermanent nature of things. So you can make a plan mindfully, but you also know it may never happen. Who can predict exactly what will happen in the future? You can't. You can plan for it and make allowances for things. You can make schedules, make appointments. You can use calendars, but you have to keep in mind that it's not sure. It's impermanent. And the past we can learn from. We can learn many things from our past experiences, but we have to keep mindful that it is just a memory and it has to be let go of. And one of the reasons you feel very good when you meditate and mindfulness becomes stronger, more continuous, is because your mind is letting go of its obsession with concepts such as time. So you have this sense of timelessness. It's pleasant, it's relaxing. The nearest you can compare it to is like going on a holiday where you have at least a few weeks or whatever in the place you want to be, and you can forget about everything else in your life. So you get a sort of rest. But then as the holiday gets closer to the end, you start thinking, I've got to go back to work, back to this, back to that. And so you start not enjoying it at the end. Meditation can be like that. People meditate and they may become quite mindful and forget about everything and just stay with the breath and get deeply quiet and still with the breath. But at some point the thought arises, when's this going to end? When's this meditation going to end? I'm going to have to do this. And then the thoughts about what you're going to do next start to re-emerge, don't they? So of course mindfulness isn't something you stop when you stop the meditation. You know, how many of us do that? You meditate for an hour and then, oh, that's it, I've done my meditation, I've done my mindfulness practice, now back to the real world, and you don't look after that state of mindfulness, and so you start thinking about things and the same old habits return, wanting this, wanting that, desiring, planning, getting disappointed when you don't get what you want. You know, it goes back to the same old habits, because it's quite hard to meditate, and then it's even harder to preserve the mindfulness and the stillness that you've achieved. Quite often it just dissipates, doesn't it? So in the time of the Buddha, they didn't do meditation retreats or talk about meditation techniques quite so much, because really the Buddha was encouraging people to develop the qualities of mind that you develop in meditation, but all the time. It doesn't mean to say he was saying everyone has to become a monk or a nun. Nobody who understands the human mind and understands Buddhist monasticism would expect that. You know, the majority of people in the world are not ready to become monks and nuns. But the qualities that you develop in meditation you can bring into daily life, and that's what the Buddha encouraged. You can practice mindfulness in all postures, in all activities. You can practice right effort in all activities at all times. You know, the four right efforts make up part of this path. You know, they're always applicable in every situation. You know, the effort to prevent unwholesome, unskillful mental states that have not yet arisen from arising. So the Buddha is already giving us a practice to keep us out of suffering, keep us out of trouble. You know, before you're suffering, getting caught into those negative thoughts, you're already aiming to prevent them from arising in the first place. You know, true right effort has to be like that. If you're keeping your attention in the present moment, you're practicing heedfulness, you're on guard to stop your mind slipping into the next unwholesome mind state. And that carries through in our daily life to, you know, activities that are gonna, you know from previous experience, are gonna generate a lot of negativity or a lot of frustration, you know, desires that then get frustrated and lead to disappointment or lead to addiction, lead you to lose your mindfulness, become caught up, intoxicated. You're already, part of our practice is preventing us falling into negative states of mind. And then if they do arise, because we lose our mindfulness and we're not fully heedful, well, the next right effort is to abandon those that have arisen. Already those two factors in the right effort, practice of right effort, you know, they're covering every base. And if you're keeping your mind in the present moment, you can do that. So of course, there's always lapses of mindfulness, so a few moments of greed, selfishness come in, anger comes in, negativity, fear, worry, whatever, they slip in. But if you're getting into the habit of bringing up mindfulness, then you're aiming to catch them and say, no, I'm not going to follow this, let it go. Just like when you're doing a meditation session, but this could be in any other time of day, couldn't it? It could be when you're walking along, shopping, talking to your friend, eating your meal, falling asleep, having a bath. You know, your mind is there, active all the time, so the four right efforts are always there to be practiced. Bringing your attention back to the present moment, to your body, the posture, the breath, what am I thinking, what am I doing now? And then observing, am I falling into negative mind states? Am I about to? Is something I'm going to do going to lead to a lot more negativity? Does it help me to be more peaceful, wiser, clearer in my mind? Or does it just make things worse? You know, even before you do things, you should be thinking about this. And then the other half of right effort will bring up wholesome states that haven't yet arisen, bring them up, develop them. Reflect on the Dhamma, establish mindfulness, bring up some wholesome qualities of mind, kindness, compassion, reflect on the impermanence of things, wisdom. And once you've established your mind in wholesome dhammas, maintain them, develop them further. And this is why we say, when you meditate and you do establish some mindfulness, at the end of your meditation, don't just stop there. As you get up and go and do other things, we'll try to keep the mindfulness there, present. Keep returning to the present moment, so your mind is ready to contemplate. Wisdom works best when you're mindful in the present moment. It's different from the learning from books and talks like this. This is one way of learning, and it's not pointless. It helps us to give us some structure to our thinking and our understand the path that we're practicing. But the wisdom and insight that comes from keeping your mind in the present moment is seeing, say, impermanence. It's different from reading about it. Seeing thoughts arising and ceasing, different moods and mental states coming and going. And that naturally leads to a sense of letting go. Because when you see your own state of mind rise, pass away, the thoughts change, it's only a thought, it's only a mood, it's come, it's gone. And your mind doesn't believe it so much when you see the impermanent nature of it. When we're not in the present moment, we're not mindful, well, what happens? We just believe everything and get caught up in it. We believe every thought, we become every thought, every feeling, every emotion. So we do get lost in the past, lost in the future, anxious about the future, planning and wanting for the future. But bringing the mind to the present moment, it's a kind of an acquired taste, isn't it? Because part of our habit is we like to dwell in the past, dwell in the future. That's what we're used to. But it's not good for us. It's suffering. So you have to get more familiar with keeping the mind in the present moment and appreciate it, give value to that practice, because it's not always easy. It takes effort. What takes effort, after a while you lose interest because I've got to be mindful. So meditation, after a while, we do it for a while and then it becomes unfashionable for a while. Oh, can't do that, not doing that anymore. Too much effort involved. But the alternative is we'll live in this dream world of past and future and never quite with the present moment. And so we keep suffering. Keep holding on to things, desiring things. Often it's the times when we're under pressure that we do become mindful. When you do have something you have to do, a job that you have to do because it's important, and you start to become more mindful, don't you? You have to do it. But then what we tend to do is you do that job and then you want to relax. You don't want to do anything. You want to have your holiday, your pleasure, indulge your pleasure. So we let go of the practice at that point. So we have to learn how to gently nudge ourselves back to the practice of mindfulness. Things that are important bring up mindfulness. Things that are dangerous to you. Drive a car, your mind can drift away from the act of driving for a little while, but not for very long. It's too dangerous. And if you're really, say, sleepy, then it's not good. You can't drive under the influence, drink or drugs, because it's just too dangerous. People do, and then things happen. But generally, you can't be too drift off into the past or the future when you're driving. You have to be present for it to be safe. It's the same with many activities. You have, when there's a little bit of risk or danger or the consequences are more important, then you become mindful in the present moment for a period. But then you slack off when it doesn't seem like the consequences are going to matter too much. Then we let go of the practice, we give up. But what the Buddha was encouraging is to see, well, every moment matters, every day matters. The important time is right here, right now. What can you do today, the best that you can do today? To bring up that sense of heedfulness and to say, well, every moment matters. It's not like there are some important moments and then other moments it doesn't matter. There's my practice time when I'm mindful and putting effort into that, and then there's downtime when I don't care and I'm just going to indulge myself. And we all do that, but you've got to try to rein the mind in and say, well, the downtime does matter, because it's all like one step forward, two step back all the time, isn't it? I put my effort into my meditation, being mindful for a while, being strict, be disciplined, being careful what I think, letting go of the negative thoughts, and then after a while, oh, I'm tired, and you give up and just let the mind do whatever it wants. We have to try and get out of that habit and develop this sense of continuity, gently bringing the mind back at all times. And that's the way you get through the waves of the ocean. Little by little, you're edging towards the unconditioned by keeping your mind in the present moment all the time, or as much as you can. Monks understand this living in the forest, because sometimes there's times when you just have to be mindful. When say a snake comes, if you've lived in Australian forest or Thai forest or jungle somewhere, jungle tends to be inhabited by all kinds of creatures such as snakes, and snakes make you mindful when snakes come. I was brought up in the UK. I saw a snake once in my first 20 years in the UK, just once. I went to Thailand, I was seeing snakes almost every day, living in the jungle. So it makes you very mindful, because you just don't know where the next snake's coming from, and they come into your hut, they come into your place where you're meditating, they can come up onto your legs when you're meditating, it can be around the next corner. And sometimes it literally was like that. You never knew when the next poisonous snake would be there. So it makes you very mindful. I'm actually grateful for snakes, because they force you to be mindful in many situations where you might be just thinking about what you want or what you don't like or something, caught up in your own negative state of mind, and then a snake comes and you can't think about that stuff anymore. You have to be mindful while the snake is there. Big snakes, little snakes, they're all like teachers. But many other things are the same in life. It can be people that we find difficult to be with. Well, they're just like a snake, aren't they? They make us mindful. You have to be on guard when you're around this person, otherwise you're going to get angry or afraid or have problems. So those people can help you, and they're teaching you, whoever it may be. Your family member, your boss, your co-worker, your neighbor, a fellow driver on the road. Someone's driving badly on the road. Maybe they're teaching you to be mindful, because you just don't know what they're up to, what they're going to do next. And they're helping you. It's not always pleasant. When these situations arise, whether it's a bad driver or a snake or your co-worker who tries to get at you, they're not pleasant situations, but they actually make us mindful. So often the unpleasant makes us mindful. It's just a fact of life. When there's danger, there's risk, there's a problem, sometimes that helps us to be mindful. When we're comfortable, we often become unmindful. We're not in the present moment anymore. That's why we like to go home at night and just let off steam. So sometimes we go home and we're not careful, so we argue or we indulge or we get drunk or whatever it is we do at home to let off steam. But often it's the worst for us, because we lose our mindfulness. But because it's our home, we say, this is my spot, my place, I can do what I want. That word, do what I want, that's craving. That's craving that I can do what I want. So your mental defilements, greed, anger, delusion are having fun then. They say, now is my chance. They're not on guard anymore. They're not being mindful anymore. So often our worst kilesas and defilements come out at home. So our suffering, the worst suffering is at home, isn't it?
The worst arguments, the worst disputes, the worst indulgences, the worst greed tends to be at home because we're least mindful. So we can't predict what life will bring us, but we can prepare ourselves for it, bringing up the right qualities, the mindfulness, and using our mind to understand suffering better, how it arises and how to end it. And this is what you get from the Buddhist practice. And keeping the mind in the present moment as much as you can gives you the right tools to do that. And no one can predict what the future holds, but you can prepare yourself for it by training to be in the present moment as much as possible. Then you can make better choices. Your wisdom works better. So maybe tonight I'll leave you with these reflections and wish you all well.